Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk about an issue that our administration has been working on for several months. I am asking you to take this up, and in the interest of transparency, before you all vote on this measure, we want to give our presentation on it so the public has its opportunity. We've been going out to business groups and civic organizations. We're also going to hold 2 additional meetings before you all take this up. But this presentation is to talk about one of the most important things that we need to do for the future of Jefferson Parish is securing our water and sewer system, which is a very aging system. So I'm going to let Mark do the PowerPoint, but I just kind of want to introduce the reasons why our administration has spent so much time on this. Quite frankly, this would have been the first thing I would have done coming on into being parish president had it not been for COVID. We started this, one of my first meetings with Sidney Basley, understanding water collections, and I told him I want you to make sure our collections are at a rate that meets industry standards before I go ask for more money. That was one of the very first meetings I had. I've known this has to be tackled for a very long time. Quite frankly, it should have been tackled, probably 10 years ago. But right now, we are in a situation that the public probably would not understand we're in. We have a water and sewer system that is old. Much of this was put into place in 1930s, 1950s. You go drive by the beautiful building on Jefferson Highway, which is our water treatment plant. That was built in the 1930s. We're going to show you pictures of that. Many pipes that are laid under your streets were put in the 1950s. So at the current time, we are actually losing money in both of these systems. A healthy and a financial public works system looks like this. You have an operating budget that you do to day-to-day activities, you run your personnel and your costs through, and you have a capital budget where you're looking for making improvements. When people are driving down the street and seeing new projects, that comes from a capital budget. A financially healthy system is you have leftover operations that you can put toward capital. A neutral system is both budgets are kind of doing their own thing and paying costs and doing the projects that we have. I have to tell you that we have a poor financial system in both of these, and that we are actually robbing Peter to pay Paul. We're actually taking capital money away from improvement projects to put toward daily, everyday expenses. That is upside down, folks, in terms of a public infrastructure system. That is a recipe for a very bleak future, and it's not hard for me to say because that's the way it is. It's not good news, but we do have a plan to get us out of this situation. With limited resources, we replace equipment, pipes, lift stations, not in a strategic way, not in a managed way. We replace it as it breaks. This is not a cost-effective way of doing business. I liken it to replacing the roof on your house. This is the simplest example I can say. If the roof on your house is only good for 15 to 20 years and you replace it at year 15, you have time to go out and get bids. You have time. You can do it in a calm manner. You can get a good quality at a decent cost to replace the roof in your house. If you wait until your roof is leaking and broken and water is coming into your house, you're paying premium prices because it's an emergency situation. You're replacing sheetrock. You have a mold situation. You have your air conditioning situation. You're doing it at a much higher cost. And that's how we're doing business in these systems. Obviously, we want to move toward a managed and planned infrastructure replacement system to replace these pipes and not doing it just when they break. And we want to bring both of these systems up to today's standards. So we want to move away from a system where you actually have somebody come to your house and read your water meter every other month. And that's why you get a water bill. It's every other month because we don't have the resources to send someone physically to your house every month. We want to go toward a wireless system. We want to make sure the sewer system has generator backup and up-to-date technology and redundancy at our lift stations. So just to go over a little of the financing, I know people are going to say, well, we just passed the millage in March. The public gave you additional funds, just so people understand. That is the same funds that we've always received, not 1 penny more. So that is not additional resources with the approval of the millage. In 2013, BGR suggested that we raise the rates because it was a bad situation, and we did not do so at the time. And then again in 2020, when they supported the millages, they said, quote, in their report, without additional funding to address identified water and sewer infrastructure needs, the systems may no longer be able to provide the level of service residents expect. And council members, I know you get the calls before I get the calls. I would say to you that that is already happening. When I got on the council in 2009, I didn't get many calls like this. Now I get them. When it rains, people can't flush their toilets. We have a lady that calls and says, when it rains, I have to go to Target to go to the bathroom. That is an unacceptable situation in Jefferson Parish. And if we don't do something, this situation is going to be more frequent. So our administration is proposing a user fee increase starting next January to secure and modernize these systems, not in the short term, not just through my term, but for the next 20 years. We know it's a difficult time in our economy to propose these increases, but the bottom line is citizens rely on us delivering these essential services all the time. So the proposal is not for, it's for a very gradual increase over a long period of time. We know the economy is very delicate now. We're not proposing doubling the rates, getting toward the averages of other communities. We are proposing a very gradual increase over a long period of time because we couldn't handle that large influx of money at the beginning anyway. We couldn't manage all those projects. So again, this is a 20-year plan. The proposal for you for the sewer increase that you will be deciding on is not an arbitrary increase. I asked my team to ask for what they need to get us secure for the next 20 years, no more, no less. So essentially, we worked backwards, and we looked at the projects that we had, we looked at the money we had, and we worked backwards from that point to see what the increase would need to be. Jefferson is known for a very strong public works program. We want to make sure we continue to do so. This is important for residents. This is important for our business climate. So later in this presentation, Mark's going to show you that the current rates we have are so far below our neighboring parishes and some of the lowest in the country. And that is a credit to our public works teams. Essentially, we're a victim of our own hard work because we fix problems quickly. And sometimes that covers up just how old the system is. And our water director will tell you that nobody would know this. We fix 200 water leaks a week in the water department. So again, signs that it is an aging system. Mark is going to show you and go through the presentation for you. I want to give you an example. The sewer main that broke in February that disturbed businesses, we had to shut down the road, would have cost about $150,000 to $200,000 if we were proactive, doing it ahead of time. The disruption it caused for several months to the businesses, to the road closure, working in wet conditions to fix it. We paid 8 times that amount under emergency circumstances, $1.4 million to fix it. That's just an example of working when things break rather than a planned and strategic replacement. So I will turn it over to Mark to get more into the presentation.
Okay, as the parish president said, what we need to do is we need to start moving away from simply patching our system to start replacing our system. Let's see, let me get this to go. This is simply a picture of our aging infrastructure. You can see the top left corner. This is what we see in our pipes, the corrosion. We simply are doing patching. You can see some of our aging infrastructure. It's important to start off with what is the footprint, so who gets affected by this proposed increase. Basically, we service all of unincorporated Jefferson Parish, the city of Kenner, the city of Harahan, Lafitte. Let me get my paper straight here. The town of Grand Isle, the Timberlane subdivision in Gretna, and the city of West Wego for water. Sewer footprint is slightly smaller. It's all of unincorporated Jefferson Parish, the town of Jean Lafitte, and the city, the Timberlane subdivision in the city of Gretna. What you see here is a map of the East Bank. All those sewer lift stations that we have, the yellow dots, they all have to pump to the central treatment plant that's in Elmwood. We have 525 lift stations across the parish due to the poor soil conditions and the flat topography that we have. This is simply a picture of all the lift stations on the West Bank that, again, are pumping to our 3 main treatment plants at Harvey, Marrero, and Bridge City. But again, the major problem is the age of our infrastructure. You can see here, this is the East Bank Water Treatment Plant. It's 90 years old, beyond its useful life, and it needs to be replaced. Here is just a picture of the caustic conditions that our lift stations, obviously with raw sewer, have to deal with. So they have to be rehabilitated on a constant basis. One of our big problems is infiltration and inflow into our sewer system. When it rains, because of our pipes are old, they have open joints due to the poor soil conditions. Water pours into the pipes when it rains, and water mixed with sewer actually bubbles back out onto our streets and sometimes into our residences, which is why we need to start replacing those pipes. Pictures again, these are our aging force mains. Again, the repairs are extremely expensive because our force mains service so much of the parish. We have to do this work at night in order not to cause problems for our residents. Again, pictures of our aging pipes, which we have to patch. And again, as the parish president said, 200 water breaks on average per week that we're addressing. Unfortunately, too, we have several 100 miles of Price Brothers pipes in both our water and sewer system. This pipe is obsolete, meaning we can't get this pipe anymore. So our repairs for these pipes are even more expensive, as we have to have special fabricated fittings to attach a different type of pipe when we have to replace a section for a break. Again, our water meters, most of them put in the 50s and 60s. As they age, they're not as accurate, and again, we have to do physical readings, which are another expense. We need to move into the 21st century with automated meters. Our water towers, we have 8 major water towers that have to be rehabilitated from the inside and outside every 15 years so that we can maintain a safe drinking water system. Grand Isle, we need to lower the Grand Isle water line. We've spent $5 million just in the past 5 years repairing breaks to this line. So if we can lower it, then we can eliminate those costs. And again, the final example is the famous geyser that we had recently on West Napoleon, sewer geyser, because again, it was a 60-inch Price Brothers pipe. You can't get it off the shelf. It took over a month to fabricate the fittings necessary to install a section of ductile iron pipe here, again, costing us roughly $1.4 million because we had to do 2 temporary repairs while we had to wait for that final repair. So, as we said, what we did is we looked at a 20-year outlook for the water system when we were going for that rate increase. We said, what are our expenses going to be for daily maintenance over those 20 years, plus finally addressing some replacement of our system? What would those expenses be? What we're up against, as you can see, this is the red line, is the expenses for the water department over the last several years. At the top, that light blue line is our revenue. And so you can see the bottom blue line is our fund balance, which has been dropping since 2017 as we try to fill that gap between expenses and revenue. Also important for everyone to understand is the water bill that all our residential customers get. It's a 2-month bill, so you need to take that bill, which you may think is high, and split it in half if you want to see what I'm paying for water and sewer versus electricity, gas, etc. But also, it's not really just a water bill. It's not even just a utility bill. The big purple section is actually what you're paying for garbage. And right on top of that is the fees that you pay for mosquito control, okay, and recreational services. So about half of the bill is not even utility related. You pay about slightly over a quarter of that bill is actually water, slightly under a quarter is sewer. So why we're in this position, and you can see the water rate comparison. We compared ourselves in order to do apples to apples on what does our average residential customer use, so what is their bill. They use approximately 6,200 gallons per month. So a resident in Jefferson Parish would pay $11.91 for that water per month. If you were in Orleans, you'd pay 4 times that, approximately $46. And Orleans is the best comparison because they have approximately the same size population, but they also have the same poor soil conditions that we have. But we also looked at Baton Rouge to see what they have. Approximately the same size population, but they don't have the same bad soil conditions, and they're still paying 2.5 times what we pay here in Jefferson Parish. Again, we look statewide. Jefferson Parish is the one at the top on that screen. We have basically the lowest rates, even when we compare it to municipalities and parishes that do not have our type of water system. Again, we look nationally, and if you can see, the size of the circle is the rates you pay. We're one of the smallest in the country. We pay about $46 per month if you were using 12,000 gallons. So even on a national scale, we have the lowest rates in the country. So we looked at what do we need for the next 20 years so that we could determine what the rates would have to be, okay? And what we have on the screen is our needs beyond what we will have to spend just to maintain the system on a daily basis. We have to replace that East Bank water treatment plant. That's a $137 million project. We're $66 million short. We're $80 million short if we want to replace all of our water meters. $22 million short to rehabilitate all our 8 water towers twice over the next 20 years. $12 million short to address our issues with the Grand Isle water line. $40 million we'll need over the next 20 years to replace equipment. We have like 17,000 valves, I think, like 18,000 fire hydrants, and we have plant equipment to replace. $42 million for emergency projects and DOTD projects. If the DOTD does an expansion in there right away, we often have to move our water line at our cost. Example, the flyover to the airport. Those new foundations affect our water line. We have to move the water line at our expense. And then finally, the big ticket item, we'd like to raise $790 million to begin replacing the existing pipes in the ground. And to show you the significance of this, in 2008, the Water Department did a study. They examined every pipe in the system, and the recommendation was you need to replace 135 miles now and 137 miles over the next 20 years. That was in 2008. The funds were never allocated. So here we are 13 years later, we have got to start replacing that system. And that's that big ticket item. So we need approximately $1.1 billion that we need to generate over the next 20 years. So the assumptions going forward. The millage, as we said, it was recently passed, will stay exactly the same when it's put in place in 2023. So we'll simply continue the same funding source. It raises about $11.7 million per year for capital for the Water Department. Our rates are tied to the annual consumer price index. That's the only increase Water Department gets. It's hovered between 0 and 2%, so we assume for 20 years it'll go up 1% per year. We assume the operating costs will go up 5% per year, which is reasonable. And in 2022, if this rate increase goes in effect, the Water Department would bond $192 million so that right off the bat we can start addressing those immediate needs, finish replacing that treatment plant, put those automated meters in. So here it is, the bottom line, the proposed increase. So what we did to try to show everyone how this works, our average residential customer uses 6,200 gallons per month. So what would that average residential customer's increase be? If you look at the last column, the first year, the average monthly bill would go up $3.08 per month for that year, okay? As the president said, we took this rate increase and spread it out over 20 years so we wouldn't hit everyone hard, they could have time to adjust. So for the first 10 years, each year that average monthly cost would go up a little over $3. If you look at the second to last column, you can follow it. You will see that in 2021, that average customer is paying $11.91 per month for their water bill. The next year in 2022, it would increase to $14.99 per month. The next year would increase to $18.10, so on through the 20-year cycle. But it's very important to understand, let's see, that we had 36% of our residents who only use a minimum amount of water, so they only have a minimum charge. This is typically your elderly, your people on fixed incomes. So they can easily manage this increase, because you'll see for 36% of our residents, that increase for the first 10 years is only roughly $1 per month. And then in the next 10 years, it drops to just around 50 cents per month. So again, if you look at the second to last column, they're paying $5.28 for water per month. 20 years later, they're still only paying $20 per month for water. So this next slide shows you basically where the Water Department is. The orange is the revenue coming in. The next column is our operating cost, and if you see that red number, we're basically going to be short about $4 million. So that has to come from our ability to do capital projects. So instead of $11.6 million that we have for the millage, we're only going to be able to spend about $7 million. If the rates are passed, if you look at the next line in 2022 in the last column, we're actually going to have $2 million above our expenses that can be added to the millage of about 11.7. We'll have over $13 million we can. And then 10 years later, as that rate increase takes effect, we'll be generating about $58 million over our expenses that can be added to the millage fund so we can actually start replacing those pipes in the ground. And that will hold through 2041. We'll, again, have about $70 million available for capital improvements. But it's also important to understand that 20 years from now, you cannot stop. This addresses about 20% of our system, so we need to be in position for the future for them to start addressing that other 80%, which is 20 years older. Not to mention the West Bank Water Treatment Plant will be 20 years older. So we set it up so that this can continue the replacement of the infrastructure 20 years from now. This last slide, again, just goes over what we would do with that $192 million, just showing you that we will complete, hopefully, the water treatment plant by 2024. Over 5 years, we can install all those water meters. We can address our tower rehabilitations, the Grand Isle water line, and it gives us $25 million over those first 4 years so we can start the pipe replacement until those rates can catch up and provide money. Sewer, done basically the same model. We looked at 20 years, same thing. Sewer department, you can see again, the gray is the expenses. They're exceeding the blue on the bar chart, which is our revenues. And you can see the gold line is going down. That's our fund balance as we try to balance our budget. But with sewer, we have that additional problem of inflow into our system. If you look at our SCADA monitoring system, the bottom, you can see that straight squiggly line. That's the volume that we're pumping when it's dry. Then you see that dramatic jump. Every time it rains, all of a sudden we're pumping up to 6 times more than what we'd be pumping on dry weather. It overwhelms our system. That's what causes the backups, which again is why we need to start replacing those pipes with those open joints. So again, the funds needed for sewer, we looked at 20 years. We estimate we're $65 million short of what we'll need to keep upgrading. We have 5 treatment plants we have to properly maintain. $145 million short for lift stations. And it's important to understand that suppose a lift station lasts for 20 years, which is a reasonable assumption considering the environment they're in. I would have to either significantly rehabilitate or totally replace more than 25 of those lift stations every year. We need $40 million basically to keep up with the force main breaks over 20 years, $24 million to address our deficiencies with our Price Brothers as they break. We estimate $100 million for gravity system repairs, $4 million for SCADA. SCADA, we'd like to put on as many of our lift stations as possible because SCADA relays information back and tells us if I have a problem with a pump instead of us having to wait till the pump fails and we have an overflow. And odor control, which is always an issue throughout the parish. We'd like to spend another $8 million to try to keep addressing those issues. And then generator installation, $32 million we're short. We want to put generators in as many lift stations as possible. It's an electricity-dependent system. When the electricity goes out, our treatment plants have backup generators and some of our big lift stations, but the majority of our lift stations don't. And then finally, you see the last big ticket item, $800 million to start replacing those pipes, addressing the I&I. But again, that's about 20% of our system. So we need approximately $1.2 billion over the next 20 years. And again, the rate comparison is even worse when we look at sewer. The average residential customer pays about $10.50 per month. If you were in Orleans for that same amount, you'd be paying $81, more than 7 times. Even in Baton Rouge, which again doesn't have those poor soil conditions, you're paying 4 times as much as what we pay here. Assumptions were basically the same. We keep the millage, which raises about $9.6 million for sewer, the same. The annual CPI is set at, we estimate at 1% per year. Operating costs increase by 5%. And again, we will bond $100 million for the sewer department to address their immediate needs over the first 4 years until the rates catch up. So what is the average increase for an average residential customer? You can see here it's just under $4 per month per year for the first 10 years and then drops down to approximately $2.50 per month each year for the next 10 years. Go into that second to last column. Right now, that average customer is paying $10.50 a month for sewer. The next year would be $14.27 per month. The next year, $18, etc. But again, if we look at those minimum customers, 36% of our residents that are on those fixed incomes are elderly, the increase is only basically $1 per month for those first 10 years, and then a little over 60 cents a month for those next 10 years. So you start at $3.74 right now is what you're paying per month. Again, you're only paying $20 per month 20 years later for your sewer. Same thing, basically, as we look at operating versus revenue. This year, we anticipate, if you look at the last column in red, we'll be in the hole about $1.5 million. So we have nothing to transfer to capital. If the rate increase is put in place in 2022, we estimate we'll be $6 million over. That $6 million will start funding capital improvements. 10 years later, as the gradual rate increase takes hold, we'll be generating $74 million 10 years from now that can go to capital. And 20 years from now, it'll be $95 million. But again, the key is we need to be generating that 20 years from now because I still have 80% of the system that needs to be replaced, and I have 5 treatment plants that are 20 years older. So basically, the last slide again shows what we would do with that $100 million we bond. We would simply keep maintaining and upgrading our treatment plants, lift stations, our force mains, our gravity systems. But the most important thing on this next slide is I would have approximately $42 million that I could utilize in those first 4 years to start replacing the pipes. And why is that extra important? Because we have 10 compliance orders with DEQ. We need to show DEQ that we're taking an active, proactive role in addressing our overflows. Okay, right now what happens is we have an overflow, we get cited by DEQ, we go patch the lines, we replace a pump. We need to show DEQ that we're going to be proactive so that we can avoid the federal government coming into Jefferson Parish and taking over the system and setting our rates. And that basically concludes the presentation. The last slide is basically what the parish president said. The BGR is highly in favor of a rate increase because, again, the people that use the system are the ones paying, and they have the ability to manage their consumption and therefore manage their bill. And then with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
And if I could just conclude, thank you, Mark, for the presentation. We want to be very transparent in this. We're going to put this presentation on the website. Also want to say, like I mentioned before, we're going to host 2 additional community meetings for anybody who wants to come in person and ask questions. August 17th at the East Bank Council Chambers, August 18th at the West Bank Council Chambers. We've been proactive in this presentation for the last several weeks. We hosted a Zoom call with civic associations on July 7th, but of course, all of their members have an opportunity to make 2 additional meetings. And I also want to let you know, we received the endorsement. We made presentations to our business community as well, and we received the endorsement for this proposal from the Jefferson Business Council, the Jefferson Parish Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Elmwood Business Association. So they have sent letters of support for this proposal. So we are asking that, happy to answer any questions, but that this measure get read into summary today for deliberation at the next council meeting.
Thank you, Madam President. Does anyone up here have any questions? Councilman Bonanno?
Mr. Drews, one of the problems that my office faces almost on a daily basis is the smaller neighborhood lines breaking. I mean, and in some of these streets, I've had the same street have experienced 5 breaks within a short period of time. So where do those smaller lines fall in your list of priorities for replacement?
Again, what was done in 2008 was every pipe in the system was looked at, age, number of breaks, okay, type of pipe, etc. So they were all ranked in order of what needs to be replaced first. So the history of the breaks is something that will be taken into effect. We have a firm on board now that has that information, is actually updating it now to bring it up to current to check to see, okay, where is this line again with respect, it might have more breaks, etc. So the goal is to have in place by the time we actually have money enough to start replacing that, we will have in place a priority system based on the number of breaks, et cetera, so that we can do this in the most efficient manner possible.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilwoman Bev Drankin?
I wanted to thank you all, first of all, because looking at the presentation, you can certainly tell the amount of time and effort and analysis that you all did to get to this point, to make a recommendation on how to move forward, not kicking down the can down the road, but beginning to address this. I know we've had recent meetings for our district, the Metairie area. We have several homeowners, as the parish president alluded to, who cannot flush their toilet when it rains. And that is a huge inconvenience in terms of your quality of life of being able to enjoy your home, especially when you consider we've had rain daily for the past few months. And it's difficult when we have those meetings and there's not an easy answer. There's not a quick fix. We actually have one homeowner who invested in a portalet at their home because they need to resort to that so frequently. That certainly, I know, is not what we envision for the quality of life for our residents. And so I think this is a reasonable path forward. I very much appreciate the approach of having it based on user fees, because that does allow you control to a great extent. I know I was teaching my granddaughter a lesson. She turned on the water as soon as she put the toothpaste on the toothbrush. I said, you don't need the water yet, and so we turn the water off, and when you get to the point you need the water, you turn it on. So it allows people to have some element of control in their use, and I think that is excellent. And the last thing I'll say, of course, our business community has had a tough year with COVID, as all have. And when you talk about the interruption that a water system that they need to be able to depend on, because if we get into a pattern of not addressing this now, and we have boil water advisories that affect our families and the ability for them to just, do things at home, as well as our all of our restaurants, our businesses that would have to throw out ice, that would have to bring in bottled water. That kind of interruption is certainly something I know our business community wants to avoid at all costs. And I'm going to knock on wood, we've been very fortunate to avoid those kinds of boil water advisories with any kind of frequency. So thank you for putting this together in the manner in which you did, and putting the presentation together so that our residents will be informed and can ask questions and get involved from here.
And I appreciate that. And look, I'd be remiss not to mention that, again, it was a team effort, because our finance department was heavily involved, Tim Palmatier and Victor, because, again, the assumptions that we make, that's not public works. We go to the experts, and the administration worked hard with sewer and the water department to put this together. And what people have to understand, too, is that in order to repair this infrastructure, unfortunately, it'd be nice if I could just go in and replace the water sewer line. But every time I have to replace a water sewer line, I either have to rip up the street and replace the street, or I have to rip up every driveway that's in the way and replace it. So the costs are actually much more expensive than if I was simply just putting a new water line in virgin territory.
Councilman Impastato.
Thank you. My comments and questions are mainly because what I intend to do is take this clip from the council meeting and your presentation and share it on our Facebook page in District 4 and use this as our community outreach when we go to civic associations and whatnot over the course of the next couple of months to make sure the community is aware. So I want to say a few things and then ask a few things so you can hopefully highlight some of the points in your presentation for the public to be fully aware of what we're talking about and cognizant of the details here. First of all, as everyone knows, District 4, we represent roughly two-thirds of our district is within the city of Kenner. The other third is represented by Councilman Lee, in District 3, in the parish District 3. Unfortunately, Kenner residents have been down this road on the negative side of this, on the sewer side. When I first got into public office 7 years ago, we were hit in Kenner, and Mike Quigley, my chief of staff here at the parish, and your predecessor, Jose Gonzalez, was the public works director then, unfortunately had to face the music of a DEQ compliance order. And utilization rates for sewer were hit residents in the city of Kenner, myself, Mr. Morella, and those others in the room from Kenner, had basically a mandatory sewer surcharge rate increase that was forced upon us in order to meet a DEQ compliance order. And a lot of people don't realize this. Kenner's rates are higher than what unincorporated Jefferson pays. So even within the same parish, the largest city in Jefferson Parish is paying more for sewer sewer services than unincorporated Jefferson. I think that's a critical point to understand the balance that the administration's trying to strike and that ultimately this council will have to consider. So I think the prudence in being able to perform those capital improvements prior to a forced compliance order by DEQ is something that we in Jefferson Parish have unfortunately had to feel, and it's not good. And so, but in terms of questions, my understanding, there's sewer and water, not the same thing. Both, though, are charged on a consumption basis. Am I right?
Correct. Basically, whatever amount of water you consume, 85% of that is assumed to go back into the sewer system, so you are billed based on 85% of your water consumption.
All right. All right. Let me ask it again. Okay, I just want to be clear. Sewer, what we're talking about here are consumption-based rates. So if you use more water, your bill is higher than someone who uses less water. Fair?
Correct.
Okay. Sewer, how is that? What is the utilization there? Is it also based on water consumption?
It's the same thing.
Okay.
So it's based on your water consumption.
Okay.
So the more water you consume, both of your bills will be higher. Because what we assume, like I said, is that 85% of what you use is actually going to go back into the sewer system, which is, every time you wash your clothes, you take a bath, you run your faucet in your sink, that water goes back into the system. Not all your water does, okay, because you may water your garden or do something. So the assumption has always been 85%.
All right. So, and I don't know if this is just, could I get to slide 24? Could I look at two of the slides, please? If that's too difficult, we could just talk about them, but.
Let me see.
That's all right. I mean, I can just, I believe slide 24 was the grid of the water, the proposed, the potential water increase for the average customer. So on the water side of the bill, an average customer could expect a roughly $3 a month increase.
Increase each year
I understand.
for the first 10 years, and then it would drop to about $1.50.
Understand. $3 a month increase this year, then an
Roughly about a
additional.
little more than $3 because of the CPI the next year.
All right. And then we don't need to go to it, but slide 36 was the sewer increase.
Correct.
Would be another $3, correct?
A little more. The sewer, I think, is a little more than that. It's about roughly $3.80 to $4 the first 10
Okay.
years, and then it's dropping to around $2, I think, and 50 cents, and around that number.
So in terms of the immediate future, a constituent would expect, if all this passed, on average, a $6 to $7 a month increase in their bill for both sewer and water combined.
Correct.
But 36% of the parish, it would be $2 a month total.
Correct.
Okay? So, okay. All right. That's it. I just wanted to make sure that's understood as to exactly what we're talking about. And at the moment, we bill every other month.
Every other month, correct.
So on the bill, it would be
Be twice.
$12 to $14 per bill.
Correct.
Which is $6 to $7 per month. All right.
Councilman, if I could, and if we could go back to slide 18, this is one of the public perceptions that we fight and does not benefit Jefferson Parish, because the top of the bill that you see, and I even get caught up in the mindset, is the water bill. We all think we pay the water bill. And then, but if you look, we pay for mosquito control, safe water fee. Some people pay for Lafreniere Park, I believe I do, garbage service, recycling. So you put it in your head that that's what you pay for water, when in fact, the water and sewer are just two components of that much larger bill. Also, that doesn't help us in terms of public perception is that this bill comes every other month. So you really need to have that if you're comparing it to your other monthly bills, but some people just kind of think of it as a monthly bill with all their other monthly bills, because all your other utility and your cable and all that is monthly. So those are two things which don't help us in terms of public perception, that people don't realize how very low our water and sewer rates are. So I'm glad you brought that up, Councilman.
To dovetail on that, I'd marked that slide as well. Is this that same average bill that's used in slides 24 and 36? It says 12,000 gallons.
Yes, because it's basically, what, $6,200 a month, so if you double it, it's about $12,000. That's roughly an average bill that's shown on that slide.
So, okay. So we're looking at potentially a 12 to 15% per bill increase.
It'd be 12, yeah, I'd have to Yeah, percentage-wise, I'd have to take a look at it. Just
It looks like
to make
roughly 6% per month, it looks like to me. So, I don't know, just for posterity. But thank you, and I will say lastly, to conclude my portion, the need in District 4 is without question. The effect of erosion and subsidence on our sewer system is dramatic. We have neighborhoods in District 4 that have decades-old problems, and there's no doubt this is the only solution. And Brett Todd, Mike Lockwood, they're doing their best on the sewer side. We've had less water issues in District 4 than sewer. This would seem to be the only way out. So unless, we're going to get the message out to the public in District 4 and we will be supportive of this effort. So thank you, Mark, Parish President, Steve Lachute, Tim, all of you. Thank you. Thank you, Council Chairman.
And thank you all for the in-depth presentation. It's very clear and I think easy to understand. If it's not on our website already, can that be made available publicly? And a copy of this to all of our offices as well in a PDF that we can, because we've gotten calls, and I think instead of trying to explain it ourselves, it's easier when you can see the graphs and the charts and see the video message as well. So we'll make sure we put all that out there. When we talk about the future of Jefferson Parish, this is something that we need to do to build the future of Jefferson Parish. And it finally came due. It's been kicked down the road for a long time, and this is the time it needs to be addressed. So we'll be supportive of it as well. Appreciate the information.